Hi and welcome to the first in a series of videos on Tinkercad. Now you've probably searched the internet if you're anything like me, and you've looked at video after video, tutorial after tutorial of people trying to show you how to use Tinkercad, made by people who understand how to use Tinkercad but don't understand how to tell you how to use Tinkercad. I've watched some really good ones. I watched a few the other night, but they were 6 years old, and the platform has been upgraded since then, so there's features in the new platform that weren't in the tutorial videos. And I thought it'd be good as a teacher to do a video that shows you as a teacher or just someone starting out, how do you get going in Tinkercad? Where do you start? And this is going to be from the very basics right up to creating projects. Today's lesson, we're just going to look at the Tinkercad interface, or the platform you'll see when you sign in. If you haven't signed into Tinkercad yet, you'll need to do the rest of this lesson. And then we will look at the workplane and how the mouse works. So that's going to be our thing today. We'll look at the mouse and a few other little bits and pieces within the workplane, and then we'll progressively build on those with the rest of the lessons until we've got a few ideas and a few skills. And then once we've done that, we'll start building some projects that, if you're a primary teacher like I am, I teach digital technology to grades Foundation to 6. So if you are in Australia, that you'll understand what that means, but Foundation is 5 years old up to grade 6, which is 12, 13 years old in some cases. And last year was the first time I'd turned on a 3D printer in my life. It was an older printer. It beeped. I got very excited when the lights came on, and then I didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, what do I do? And I've since then progressed from having 2 P1Ss in the classroom that I teach, and actively teaching 3D printing to my grades 3 to 6. And I've now got a P2S at home. So am I an expert? Not by a long shot. Do I know enough to be able to communicate my stuff to you? Yes, I do. If I can teach a 5-year-old, I'm sure I can teach you. So I'm going to put myself to the background, and we'll make a start on our first in the series of Tinkercad, from the basics to more. All right, so here we go. This is the Tinkercad platform. If you're here, you can see down the side I've got classes where I put all my students in. If you're a teacher, it's really handy to develop classes, because then if you have your students signed in as in the classwork, you can access all of their work. So when they say they're having a problem, they don't have to bring their laptop to you. You can just quickly jump into their work and have a look see what the problem is. They can come over and sit with you. It just saves you being around all over the classroom when you don't need to be. If you want to get up and be moving, that's fine. But this also gives you the option to get into their work after they've left and see which students are exactly producing and which ones are not. Are there any little problems you can fix so that you can print their work and they actually get to go home happy that day? So if you're in this workspace here, that's all of this stuff down the side. Over here, we're going to click on the Create button. Now you'll see that there's circuits and code blocks. I will admit I have not dabbled in this. I've only done 3D design, 3D printing. So we're going to click 3D design, and that'll open up a new workplane for us. If you're wondering what the workplane is, it's this thing. It's got workplane on it, and it's where our design bed is going to be. Now we can change the size of our workplane. Now I did this the other day for the first time, so it's something I learned. If you have a printer, this is currently set to, I think, 200 by 200 as the default. You can go to the settings bar down the bottom here. And if your printer has a workbed that's bigger than that, mine has 256 by 256, you can change this here, and you'll need to change, you just change it there like so, 256 by 256, which is the workbed on mine. If yours is bigger or smaller, and then you can set all your custom settings here. You can leave it at metric, show the grid, shadows, etc. Shadows, don't turn that off, it's very handy. Choose your background color, which is the background around here. And then I'm going to set it as default. So now from every time I get in, my workplane will be set at exactly the right dimensions for my printer. So I know that what I design here will fit on my print bed. Okay, so the very first thing we need to look at is, what do we see here right now? So there's a few settings for a start, but the biggest and most important one, if you are working with children, you want to be able to tell them to use a mouse. You have to use them. They can use the trackpad on a computer if they like, but a trackpad is really, really hard to use if you're using a laptop. It is so much more important to use a mouse because there are functions that the middle mouse wheel does that you can't do with a trackpad, or you can, but it's really tricky. So let's look at what the mouse does for a start. All right, so if I right click on my mouse and I hold it on the work plane, it gives me the option to roll my work plane around. So I can have a look at it from the underside. I can spin everything around like so, and that is the right click. All right, I can achieve that same function by grabbing the cube up the top and left clicking on it and also rolling that around, or just clicking on a particular component of the screen that I want to see and it'll rotate to there. All right, so I've rotated the plane using a right click or using the cube. Now when I have messed everything up and offset it, I can left click on the home key and it spins my work plane back to the start. All right, so that's very, very handy. Now the middle mouse wheel, I can scroll it in and out to zoom. So that's just rolling the middle mouse wheel in and out to zoom. Or if I want to reposition my work plane, because you can see here, this bottom bit is too far down on the screen. I'm just enlarging things. It's too far down on the screen. I can middle mouse click and then I can move my work plane around. It doesn't scroll or roll it around. It just moves it left, right, up, down, diagonal, whichever way I move the mouse without changing the angle or the direction of the work plane. So that's your middle mouse wheel. Zoom in and out and move your work plane around. Okay, so left click, pretty simple. Left click, you use it to left click and drag like you do with every other program. If I had a shape on the work plane, which you could do as well, if I left click on it, I left click it to resize it or select it, and then I can drag any of the dots in any direction, but we'll get into resizing shapes later on. So that is your mouse. So right click, middle mouse, left click. All right, so that is your mouse control for this program. You saw the home view over here as well. So that resets your work plane. This one here is your fit it all in the view, just as it says. And that is, if I've got a whole heap of stuff here, it will make sure if I had it off to the side like so, and I hit that one, it would then center everything in so that I could see it all without it being zoomed in or zoomed out. One thing you may want to note with your zoom in, zoom out is when you scroll with your middle mouse wheel, it will zoom on the point where your cursor is. So if I move my cursor down to the E and I roll in, that's what it's zooming in on. If I move over here and I roll in, that's what it's zooming in on. So you can physically look at objects and go, oh, I want to look at that, and you can roll in on that one. You can change your position of your work plane by holding your right mouse down and zooming back out again. And once I've messed everything up, I can go back to the home key. All right, so I'm just repositioning so things fit. Obviously this one here zooms in and out, same sort of thing. And this one here gives us a flat view, bird's eye view. In essence, you will look straight down on top of it if you wanted to have a look and see how everything fits. I don't tend to use this one so much because I'm doing 3D print and I want to see a 3D view, but this gives us more of a two-dimensional look down, bird's eye view of whatever we're creating on the work plane. All right, so that is your mouse and the functions here on the side. So you've created a design. Actually, you haven't created a design. You've opened a work plane and you've had a look at these ones up the side as well. And that's the basics of it. Up here you can see it gives, Tinkercad by default gives every everything a strange name. It doesn't matter what it is. It comes up with something very random, very unique all the time. Shiny biggery, it's fantabulous, whatever, it'll do it. To change that to your own name, you just click on it, and then you can just call it whatever, testing the waters or whatever. You give it a name so that when you go to download it, you know exactly what you're downloading. All right, so in here as well, we have the redo and the undo buttons. Just like when you're using any other products, you make a mistake, you can undo it, or you can redo it, etc. So that's pretty simple as well. So that, in this lesson, is all I wanted to teach you for the very first session. The next session, we'll go over putting some shapes in, and we'll put a shape in and we'll resize it, and we'll have a look at some of these other options down the side. But for today, we just wanted to create a work plane, set up our work plane dimensions, and understand that this is the work plane. We've had a look at these functions down the side. We've had a look at the cube, and that is you started. All right, so that, I'm just going to put myself to the background. So that's lesson 1. Tinkercad isn't as mystifying as it needs to be, but I know for me, when I first started Tinkercad, it drove me nuts. I couldn't figure out what did what, how I did things, how I resized things. And I'm hoping that as we work through this, you will be able to figure things out. So first lesson, done. Next lesson, we'll put some stuff in and resize things.